So this past week, I had the opportunity again. I was in New York, and while I was flying back from New York, I was watching TV on my iPad, and one of the favorite shows that I always watch is Shark Tank. I love Shark Tank. It fills up my DVR. I just love it. I always watch that show. And while I was watching Shark Tank, they had a particular man on there, and he was, obviously going on there. He was selling his business to these investors, and he was asking for $500,000 for a 10% share of his company. And so he went through the whole thing about what they do. They asked a whole bunch of questions, and then at the end of the day, the investors said that it was not worth it. They saw some type of value in what he was offering because they did make an offer, but it wasn't the offer that he was looking for. The entrepreneur ended up saying no. And the investor said, okay, well, just take a little bit of time. We just think about it because, we offer this, we offer that, and we can really do some really great things. And he said no again. And then one of the investors looked at him and said, you're making a very foolish mistake. He said, no, I'm not, because I know how much I'm worth. That ministered to me right there on that plane. And I asked myself a question. How much do I value my own life? All right. You see, the way that you live your life, it really shows what you value. If I pick a random person and we say, you know what, we're going to stream your entire week right here on the screen behind us, and we're all going to sit here, eat popcorn, and watch what you did all week long. How many people would sign up for that? But one thing we would understand is what you value by watching your life. The question that I have to you today is, do you know how much you are worth? What would someone pay for you? Matter of fact, let's scratch that. What would you be willing to accept if you truly knew your worth? In my profession, we do things that's called job evaluations. And so we take the role or responsibility that someone has, and they have this role and responsibility, and they plug it in, they go through, they research all these databases and things of that nature, and after they've done that, they say, okay, this job is worth this amount of money. It's a job evaluation. Recently, we had someone that we were trying to hire, and this person ended up declining the job opportunity because they felt like we were not offering what their skill set demanded. However, I told him, I said, you know what, I understand where you're coming from, but unfortunately, I can't pay you more than what the position is worth. So in the natural, we operate the belief of only supporting things of value. We set our priorities by the value that we attach to the things that are important to us. Like I said earlier, if we watch your life on the screen, we would see where you put your value. We would see where your priorities are. But that's kind of the same way in the spirit. I know in Ephesians 4:7 it says that we're each given a measure of grace. And I ask you, do you know how valuable you are as a believer? How much value do you put on the grace that has been extended to you? I'm going to ask you this question several times throughout my message today. How much value? How much value? The title of my message, for those who need a title, sacrifice with value. If you can open up in the Word of God, we're going to go to Romans 12, starting with verse number 1. It says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Is there value in your sacrifice? So just for those who are not familiar with this passage, this is a great passage. Paul was talking to the church and other people in the church and the disciples during this time. And Paul was urging believers to dedicate their bodies to God. This scripture, and leave that scripture right there. Paul knew that when a believer makes a decision to dedicate their body to God, that the carnal nature inside of them was going to wage war in them. If you think that your flesh is just going to sit down and let you serve God, you have another thing coming. Your flesh never wants to submit to the thing or do what God has called us to do. It's a battle of the flesh, wars with the spirit. And so if you've ever had an internal struggle between what you knew, what God is calling you to do, but the hang-ups or the habits that you have that kind of pull for your attention as well. The internal tug-of-war. We know that we have been allocated a certain amount of grace. And my question is, what are we doing with that grace? Grace to give, or grace to love, or grace to serve, or grace to sing, or grace to sow, or grace to surrender. We all have a certain allotment of grace. But the question today is, how are we using that grace? Let's be honest though. Just for a second. I'm going to keep it real. Just because you're a believer does not mean that you surrendered your life to Jesus Christ. They say around over 80% of people identify with being a Christian. From all walks of life, identify with being a Christian. But we know because we work with them, we sit next to them in church, not this church, but other churches. But we know that there's people who can confess to be a Christian but don't actually live out the principles of being a Christian. There's a difference from being a believer and being a sold out believer, where you're saying, God, I'll give you everything I have, I'll give you all of me. See, the thing we have to understand is that what we put into this life is what we're going to get out of this life. The time, the sacrifice. And many times we want a good thing, but I tell you, you can't ask for elevation if you can't handle the price tag that's associated with it. There's a call. There's a responsibility that comes with it. It will cost you. And a lot of times many people choose not to accept the cost because they are of the fear of the unknown. If we jumped all in with this Jesus thing, I don't know what that means for me. I enjoy doing all these things right here. If I jump all in, that probably means that I can't do these things anymore. Talk about sacrifice with value. The last several weeks, Dr. Lee has been touching on the power of the seed. And in my time today, I hope you realize that your life is a seed. Your sacrifice is a seed. Many times we think about it just monetary speaking, okay, right, or sacrifice, we think about the things that we gave up, but I'm talking about your life. Everything about you is a sacrifice. The scripture says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Paul says, I beseech you. That's him. I beg you. And there's times where we mount this platform and what we want is, we talk about at this church, we want to raise believers to levels of greatness, and we sit here, we try to encourage you, and we beseech you to realize that all the power and the potential that you have inside. Because really at the end of the day, what we want to see is we want to see God glorified in your life. We want you to see you be all that God has for you. So when we talk about getting the power of the seed and the sacrifice with value, looking at this scripture, the first thing that we have to be reminded of is that number one is he wants you. You. We have to make a conscious decision and realize that this is what he's asking for. He's asking for you to be the sacrifice. Just present your bodies. He said, I'm begging you, please present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. You have to understand that you matter to him. Mind, body, and soul. He wants it all. So the best thing that you can offer him is you. But when you offer you, he wants the complete package, all of you. Not just your partial time or your partial attention, but he wants all of you. John 10:10 says, the thief comes but to steal, kill, and destroy, but I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly. This already shows me that there's value attached to each and every one of us already. Because the price has already been paid, the ultimate price. But the issue comes when we don't exercise our God-given right as it pertains to the kingdom. tell y'all a story. Y'all might appreciate this. When I was growing up, Dr. Lee and Pastor Raymond, they would go out and I was young and I didn't have a job, and so there's many things that I wanted, right? So I remember the first time that I wanted a pair of Jordans, and I convinced them to get me a pair of Jordans. And so at the time, again, y'all know Jordans, they cost a lot of money back then, we didn't have a lot, but I'll never forget that they bought me these pair of Jordans. And I was so excited, and they bought me all these clothes and all these other whatnot and things of that nature. And I went up there and I tore everything that I tore them up. I was outside playing basketball in them. I was rolling around outside and all that, and I remember coming back and they're all scuffed up and my jeans had holes in them. And I remember Dr. Lee, y'all know Dr. Lee, right? Y'all know Dr. Lee, she sits right over there. And she looked at me and she said, boy, that's what she called me, I don't know if she still remember her name. I was like, it's an easy name, the same name as my dad, but that's beside the point, right? You don't put value on the thing that we got you. I just bought those for you. You've already messed it up. Why didn't I put value on it? Because I didn't buy it because it didn't cost me anything.